Undoubtedly, the most heard term after antivirus solution, firewalls offer a wide range of solutions to security issues. As the name suggests, the firewall acts as a barrier between the outside digital world and the local network or system, implementing protection mechanisms in several ways. Nowadays, with network-based intrusions on the rise, the implementation of a proper firewall solution in a network or a system is imperative, and proper budgeting with adequate surveys of the network is essential in order to select a firewall solution. As differing environments require different solutions without a logical outline of the environment, a firewall solution could either prove to be indispensable or useless. Moving on, it is important for us to understand what exactly it is that a firewall does in a system. A firewall inspects the traffic going through the network and based on that, the rules that have been configured in it, lets the data through or rejects it. The basis of operation of a firewall is the correct configuration of the rule set which would be implemented to provide and restrict services at the same time. The development of the rule set is essential for a firewall to provide maximum protection and requires a lot of time and effort on the part of the policy makers to develop the policies that go behind the construction of the rule sets catering to the specific network. Security solutions should be implemented keeping in mind the expansive range of security issues, and establishing a good firewall solution is no exception. Grouping firewalls into different categories helps security professionals to provide a more complete solution to a system's security, as they have the capability to cover almost all aspects of a network. A firewall can be classified into several types based on the characteristics of the scenarios it is employed in and the layers of the OSI model on which it works. The types of firewall solutions are standalone systems, enterprise firewalls, hardware firewalls, gateway, and personal firewalls. The classification takes a lot of factors into account, and the suitable firewall solution is employed after careful evaluation of the organization's network. Apart from these, firewall applications have a horde of features nowadays, and depending upon the network environment, those features are utilized. In this diagram, the various functions of a firewall are illustrated. From the client side, some of the requests generated are as such. Web browser requests a web page. A malicious program tries to send information to a hacker. Now, since the request for a web page is deemed a harmless one, and since it is allowed as per the rule set in the firewall, it is allowed to proceed to the web server. But since the program sending malicious information through the network is not authorized, the information is dropped from being sent any further. From the outside, if an attacker tries to send any malicious data, the packets are rejected by the firewall as per proper inbound rule sets configured in it. Here is a diagram which specifies the positions of various categories of firewalls based on the type of functions they perform. The firewalls shown here are a host-based firewall, an application proxy firewall, a stateful firewall, and a packet filtering firewall. A host-based firewall offers protection to end users or hosts which are connected to a corporate network. There is a stateful firewall installed which keeps a track of all the inbound and outbound connections along with their current states. There is a stateful firewall installed which keeps a track of all the inbound and outbound connections along with their current states. Connected to it is an application proxy who serves to filter out data for various applications trying to send data over the network. At the top is a packet filtering firewall present in the router, which for the network is the gateway to the internet. In order to test firewall solutions, a proper methodology is required, as the tester has no knowledge of the rule sets or the approval and rejection patterns of the firewall. Also, the level of sophistication of firewalls also differ a lot, and depending upon the demands of the network, the proper solution is configured. So setting out in such an uncertain battle requires a lot of planning. Firewall auditing or testing requires the security professional to understand the process and policies that work in a firewall in order to create a comprehensive testing plan that is essential for proper assessment. The steps which should be undertaken are as follows: gathering documentation, recon about the firewall, recon about the rule base, testing and scanning, maintenance and monitoring. These concepts are self-explanatory and the application of this process comes under the domain of scanning. Now in this slide, we shall talk about a very commonly used term in network security, and that is Bastion host. As the name suggests, the Bastion host is treated as the flag bearer of the network and has the highest priority when it comes to enforcing security in the network. It is supposed to be a highly secure host system. A Bastion host is always supposed to be potentially exposed to hostile elements, and hence it is secure to withstand potential intrusions on the network. All unnecessary services on the Bastion host must be disabled in order to keep the points of breach to a minimum. In addition, it is trusted to enforce trusted separation between the network connections, which is essential to demarcate between network points based on the levels of security. For most part, it runs circuit or application level gateways where the services should be installed and modified as per the plans of administrator and the security requirements of the network. Here is an example of a security inclined network topology known as the screened host architecture. This topology consists of an internal network which comprises of multiple end user systems or hosts and the Bastion host. The internal network is separated from the internet by a screening router. Now the screening router and the Bastion host work together as a firewall solution by constantly being on the lookout for potential intrusions from within or outside the network. The Bastion host monitors the traffic going in or out of the end hosts and only after careful inspection forwards the traffic. Further on, we shall now delve into the concept of honeypots. As the name suggests, it is the form of a trap set up in the network in order to gather information about the type of attacks that could take place and deploy preventive measures in advance. Honeypot, instead of being a protection measure, is mostly used to collect data by putting a deliberate vulnerable system on the network as a form of trap, so as to understand the nature of intrusions that could occur inside the network by collecting data about the type of information gathering processes and attack information that hackers employ in order to hunt for weak systems or breach points. The same concept could extend to networks and web applications too, in the form of honey nets and honey tokens respectively. The term honeypot was popularized in the famous book The Cuckoo's Egg, Tracking a Spy Through the Maze of Computer Espionage, which was written by Cliff Stoll. As mentioned in the previous slide, it focuses more on data collection and analysis rather than addressing security issues directly. The concept has undergone several revisions and now is redefined by the Honeypot project as a security resource whose value lies in being probed, attacked, or compromised. The honeypot has no production value, and as it is a collector of information, anything going to or from a honeypot is likely a probe, attack, or compromise. It is mostly used for monitoring, detecting, and analyzing present attacks, and based on the data collected to deduce the patterns for novel attacks in advance, so as to implement security to mitigate such attacks before they occur. Listed here are some of the advantages offered by establishing a honeypot in a network. These are: it ensures a high rate of fidelity, that is, the information provided by a honeypot is of high value. The comprehensiveness of the analysis process leads to reduced false positives. It also leads to a reduction of false negatives. The concept of honeypot is fairly simple to understand and implement. It is not resource intensive, which leads to cost reduction in its implementation. Honeypot offers a good return on investment. In other words, it is highly cost effective when comparing the cost with the value of information. It is important for us to get an idea about the role of honeypots in an enterprise. As a network security tool, the information gained via a honeypot is used to augment firewall and IDS. The information could well further research on intrusions and attack patterns and deploy various security measures to minimize risks from new forms of intrusions. On top of research, honeypots also come in handy for data analysis in terms of incident response and forensics. It also comes in handy for deception and deterrence. This diagram delivers the gist of what a honeypot does in a network. As can be seen here, it informs machines in the network of its presence. Since it is a system set as a bait or trap for attackers, an attacker machine on the network will receive the requests from the honeypot, and seeing the number of open avenues to attack, shall try to intrude into the honeypot. During this process, the data sent by the attacker machine will be logged in the honeypot, thus providing security analysts with the information needed to trace the culprit and also to analyze the attacks in order to prevent any future attempts. The figure here illustrates how a honeypot is managed by a direct connection. There are several advantages and disadvantages associated with a directly connected honey wall with one honeypot. As listed here, it is unable to sniff any traffic from the network. Hence, it is least intrusive to deploy. It also requires fewer cables to connect and can be put in line during emergency situations without any disruption. The downside to such a deployment is that the management of the honey wall or honeypot is to be done locally, as there is no separate management host for such operations. It also requires the honeypot host to be in close proximity and does not scale well in a dynamic network. The example here demonstrates the concept of a honey net consisting of two honey pots which are connected by a switch, thus are managed by a shared connection. This architecture has its own upsides and downsides. The advantages of such a deployment are that it is remotely accessible, with logging managed by a central host, and system monitoring can be done using VLANs. The disadvantages of this structure are the sniffing of traffic, the requirement of proper encryption, and VLAN configuration, and the honey wall is more susceptible for detection by an attacker. Another example of a honey net is illustrated here, with the constituent honeypot being connected through a wireless access point and monitoring WLAN packet streams for malicious content. With this, the module for firewalls and honeypots comes to an end. Following this are the demonstrations which illustrate the concepts taught in this chapter.
In this video, we shall be seeing some of the basic concepts which are associated with a firewall solution. So the first software that will be demonstrated is Zone Alarm Security. It is a free firewall provided by Checkpoint. So this is the interface for Zone Alarm Free Firewall. In here we have the firewall section. Click on View Details. You can see that we have two categories of entries over here. One is for basic firewall and the other one is for application control. If you click here, you can see the actual connections which have been blocked or allowed through this firewall, along with the date and time and the source IP. We have many other options as far as log controls are concerned. You can set alerts for different events over here by selecting any one of the events which you want. Apart from that, we have applications control. Clicking here, you will be able to see a list of controls for different applications or services which have been installed in your system. If you click on any of these applications or services, coming to the bottom of the screen, you can view the details along with the file name and the product name. In the left hand side column, you can view the OS firewall also. And we have various options for customization of this firewall solution. Apart from that, Windows has its native firewall solution, which is known as Windows Firewall, which you can open by entering this command from the run prompt. This command shortcut is valid for Windows XP, Windows Vista, Windows 7 and Windows 8. This is the firewall panel. Now, because I have Zone Alarm installed in my computer, the Windows firewall is switched off right now. But if you go to the left hand side, if you go to advanced settings, you can view the exact and detailed firewall panel over here for Windows Firewall. In this list, you can see the list of applications for which rules have been configured in this firewall. You can create your own rule by going to the right hand side panel and clicking on New Rule. And selecting the type of rule and the various details associated with this particular rule. Now, for example, if I want to implement a custom rule, selecting custom, click on next, keeping the default options for this panel, and for making this rule valid for any protocol, clicking on next. In here we can specify what IP addresses does this rule apply for. For example, if I want to apply this rule for a particular IP address, such as we want to apply this rule for the gateway, click on add, and we can enter any IP address which you want to apply this rule for, clicking on next. Now we have three options here. You can either choose to allow or block the connections as per your requirement. So for this rule, I will be blocking the connection. Clicking on next. These are the different network profiles for which the firewall rule is applicable. Clicking on next. We can enter in the details of this firewall rule along with the description. You have to enter in the description as per your rule. You can see that we have configured a new rule over here. So various other vendors are there who provide free firewall solutions.